Hello, everybody. We are talking about the Sahara Desert today, one of the largest physical features on the planet. It is, when you think of Northern Africa, this is probably the physical feature you think of. Insanely large, essentially the northern half of all of these countries, the southern, probably at least three-fourths of these countries. It is absolutely massive. But one of the things we got to understand about the Sahara is that it was not always a desert. At one point, it was, very, very green, very lush. It was the type of place that people and animals wanted to inhabit. So why was that? What changed? Why is it the way it is today? Well, the first thing is to understand that it hasn't always been in the same position with the same factors impacting it as it does today. Because at one point, it's generally believed that the world and all of its continents were not in the places that they are today. At one point, we had this thing called Pangea, and all of the continents were together, and then they all broke apart. Well, at that point, when that was going on, the physical geography was just going to be different. There were going to be different, it was going to be at a different latitude. There were going to be different wind patterns. There were going to be, different water sources. So when it was here, it was in a position where it could have a lot of plant life and animal life, humans living there, and it was a very, very natural, place for people to want to be. But when we think of it today, we think more of something like this. And the reality is that, yes, while we like to think of sand deserts, when we think deserts, and there are parts of the Sahara that are like this, actually, a majority is not like this. And there are parts that are sand desert, but and has sand dunes and all that kind of stuff. But a majority of it is actually what we see over on this side. It's what we call desert pavement. To give you a more up close look, I actually took a couple of pictures of my own yard last summer to kind of give you a visual of what this was like. So, in the summertime when it gets really, really hot, really, really dry, it hasn't rained in a while, and the ground starts to get really cracked and broken and hard like this. Okay, this is essentially what desert pavement is going to look like. It's exposed ground. There's not a lot of plant life that is on top of it, and it has just become very, very hardened. That's desert pavement. So, why are some places going to be like we have over here? This area, very green still. Everything else around it is very, very dry. The difference here is what's on top of it. The tree is going to add some protection for this, so it's not going to dry up as quickly. That's going to allow it to retain some of the water that the areas around here aren't. In a place like the Sahara Desert, you get a whole lot of places that do not have things like trees sheltering the smaller plant life underneath it, which is why you're going to see different deserts are going to grow much more quickly because they just don't have those things covering. All right, so let's get down to it. Why exactly does the Sahara Desert exist where it does today? Okay, so here is a physical map that will show you this maybe a little bit better. There are really four factors that are going to contribute to why the Sahara Desert exists where it does. First one is going to be the Atlas Mountains. Okay. The Atlas Mountains are going to be located right up here in the northwest corner. Okay. The Atlas Mountains are going to do what mountains do. Okay. Because of their position, because of where the prevailing winds and they are going to come from, they're essentially going to come in this direction, which means the Atlas Mountains are going to create a great big rain shadow behind it. Okay. So the Atlas Mountains will create a rain shadow area. And just like we talked about in the United States, for example, okay, the Sierra Nevadas create a rain shadow between that and the Rockies, that dry area in between. And that's essentially what this area back here that is the Sahara Desert is. It's a great big rain shadow caused by the Atlas Mountains. So, number one reason why is going to be the Atlas Mountains. Second reason why the Sahara Desert exists where it does is going to be its latitude. Okay. If you look at its current latitude, where it's going to be in that tropics region. So you're going to have the equator, okay, and you're going to have up to 23 and a half degrees. You're going to get those direct rays from the sun, and you get those direct rays from the sun all year long. So because it's in between that area, it gets direct rays from the sun 365 days a year. It never lets up. And when there's no cover, that's going to create your desert landscape. So, first reason why the Sahara Desert exists where it is, Atlas Mountains and the rain shadow effect. Second reason why is its latitude. It's going to get direct rays from the sun all year round. Reason number three has to do with winds. Okay, we've already established that your winds are going to come through here and it's going to create this rain shadow. You remember right from the diagram that we gave you way back at the beginning of the year. On the back side, you get winds that are very, very hot and you get winds that are very, very dry as they come down the other side of the mountain. Okay, so first of all, let's look at those winds are going to get into this area and they're going to start moving towards the equator. Okay, they go in this direction, which means that if you have hot winds that are moving towards the equator, those hot winds are just going to get hotter. Okay, they're going to continue getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter as they come across. So, reason number one, rain shadow from the Atlas Mountains. Reason number two, latitude means direct rays from the sun. Reason number three, your hot winds move across this area towards the equator and just become hotter. Reason number four, why the Sahara Desert exists where it does, is because it is located on one of what I call one of the world's largest uninterrupted land masses. What that means is that between here and here, there really aren't any opportunities for that hot wind to pick up any kind of moisture because that those we already said the hot winds get hotter as they go towards the equator, and because they're going across this, those dry winds just continue to get drier. So you got hot winds getting hotter, dry winds getting drier. Hot winds get hotter because of the equator, dry winds get drier because of the landmass. So ultimately, you've got a bunch of hot, dry winds that are going across here. And whereas you're going to find out here towards the end, this area, this part of the world has some of the worst droughts conditions anywhere. Most of the starvation that you've seen in the world has been caused by droughts that are in this part of the world. And it makes perfect sense when you have hot, dry winds coming across to this area. So one more time, the four reasons why this area does exist where it does. Atlas Mountains create a rain shadow. Latitude means you get direct rays from the sun all year long. Because of that rain shadow, you're going to get winds that come towards the equator and get hotter. You're going to have winds that come across this large landmass and get drier. You put those four things together, and you have what we call a perfect storm concept. What that means is that all four of those things came together in that particular place, and it has resulted in the largest desert in the world. If you remove any one of those four things, do we have the largest desert in the world? Well, let's take it. For example, let's take out the Atlas Mountains. If these mountains aren't here, do we have a rain shadow? No, we don't. If we don't have a rain shadow, do we have probably the largest desert in the world? Probably not. Um, if we put if we make this continent and we put a body of water in between it, we cut it in two, do we probably have the largest desert in the world? We probably don't. If we move this continent further north or further south, if it's not in that tropics area, do we have the conditions necessary? Do we have the direct rays from the sun that create the largest desert in the world? No, we probably don't. You have to have all four of these things working together at the same time in this one part of the world. Okay, so once again, those four things are going to explain why the Sahara Desert is located where it is. Okay, now that you have that information, I want to see what have you learned. You're going to go onto Canvas. There is going to be a simple, hey, explain the four items assignment. You're going to have to give us, here's the reason, like Atlas Mountains. And then you're going to have to explain that the Atlas Mountains create a rain shadow because of the way the winds come in. So that's what the assignment is. You're going to go over to Canvas right now and complete that.